Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're unpacking something absolutely crucial and honestly pretty fascinating, the architecture of ecosystem energy flow. If you've ever looked outside at a forest, a meadow, or even just your own backyard and wondered how all those living things keep going day after day, well, you're actually looking at an incredible, invisible engine at work. Today, we're going to break down exactly how nature is powered, literally from the absolute bottom all the way to the top. So I want you to think about this for a second. How does energy originating from a massive star, our sun, millions of miles away, eventually end up powering the muscles of an eagle soaring high up in the sky? It's kind of mind-blowing when you frame it that way, right? The answer is that ecosystem energy operates a whole lot like a grand relay race. It's this unbroken chain of life, passing vital energy along, step by step, organism by organism. Okay, let's dive into this. Here's the roadmap for our journey today. First, we're going to start with the basics by building a food chain. Then, we'll see how things get a bit more complex in Step 2, tangled up, food webs. Step 3 is a direct showdown, chains versus webs. In Step 4, we'll meet the cleanup crew. And finally, Step 5 will cover why it all matters. Section 1, building a food chain. Let's look at the basics of energy. What's really cool here is how straightforward this concept actually is when you break it down. A food chain is simply a sequence showing how energy and nutrients pass from one organism to another through feeding. But actually, scratch that. Don't just think of it as a dry list of animals in a textbook. Think of it as pure forward motion. It's literally the path of fuel moving from the earth directly into the biological engine of living creatures. Let's move to the next concept and see how this builds. It all kicks off at Step 1 with the sun, which is our ultimate main source of energy. The sun's energy gets captured by the grass. Then along comes a grasshopper, and it eats the grass. A frog hops by and eats the grasshopper. A snake slithers in and eats the frog. And finally, an eagle swoops down and eats the snake. See? The energy baton is passed sequentially down the line, all the way to the top predator. Let's break down the specific roles in that sequence, starting right at the foundation. The grass we just talked about in Step 2 is what we call a producer. Producers are green plants that literally make their own food using the sun's energy through a process you probably know well, photosynthesis. They are the essential starting line for energy entering the biological world. Without producers, the rest of the chain just doesn't exist, period. Next up, we've got the primary consumer. These are the herbivores, like our buddy the grasshopper, that eat the plants. We call them primary because they're the very first consumers to directly tap into that solar energy the producers work so hard to store up. Though, to the grasshopper, it's just lunch. After the grasshopper, the chain continues upward, with animals eating other consumers. The frog becomes our secondary consumer. The snake, which eats the frog, steps into the role of tertiary consumer. And sitting pretty at the very end of this line is the eagle, standing as the top consumer, or apex predator. By the time that eagle eats the snake, it is utilizing energy that originally came from the sun, was stored by the grass, and was carried all the way up the ladder by the grasshopper, the frog, and the snake. But wait, let's pause for a second. Is nature really this simple? If you go out into the wild, does an eagle literally only eat snakes? Does a frog only eat grasshoppers? No way, of course not. A single straight pathway is a fantastic way to learn the basics, but it doesn't quite capture the wild, unpredictable, chaotic reality of a living ecosystem. Which brings us to Section 2, Tangled Up, food webs, nature's true network. If a food chain is like a single highway, a food web is a bustling, overlapping map of city streets. A food web is a network of interconnected food chains. It shows us that most organisms don't just rely on a single food source. They have multiple options. And in turn, they might be eaten by several totally different predators. It's this vast, tangled web of energy flowing in a bunch of different directions all at once. And this brilliantly illustrates the concept in action. Check out these alternative pathways branching out. From the exact same patch of grass, energy could go to a rabbit, which is then eaten by a fox. Or maybe the grass gets eaten by a mouse, which is eaten by a snake, which is then caught by an eagle. Even our grasshopper from earlier might get snagged by a bird instead of a frog, and then that bird might become a meal for the eagle. All of these chains are happening simultaneously in the exact same environment. They overlap and connect to form the whole shebang, the web. Section 3, Chains versus Webs. Let's do a direct showdown. So the crucial point here really comes down to stability. Think of a simple food chain, like a giant game of Jenga. If you remove just one block, let's say a disease wipes out all the frogs, well, the snake starves, the eagle starves, and the whole system comes crashing down. It's just inherently less stable. But a food web? It has alternative food sources. If the frogs disappear, the snake can just pivot and eat mice instead. The web is highly stable because the energy can just take a different route.
Section 4. Meet the cleanup crew. How nature recycles. So what happens when the eagle, the fox, or even the grass eventually dies? The energy flow doesn't just suddenly stop. Enter the unsung heroes of the ecosystem, the decomposers. These are organisms, primarily bacteria and fungi, that break down dead plants and animals. They act as nature's ultimate 24/7 recycling department. By breaking down all this organic matter, decomposers return vital nutrients directly back into the soil. And guess who needs those nutrients? The producers. The green plants use those exact nutrients to grow, capturing the sun's energy and completely closing the loop so the entire cycle can start all over again. Section 5. Why it all matters. The blueprint of life.
Understanding food chains and webs gives us the literal blueprint for life on Earth. These models show us exactly how ecological balance is maintained, proving that no organism exists in a vacuum. Everything is totally interdependent. For students and scientists alike, understanding this web is absolutely crucial for predicting how a single change, like a destroyed habitat or a newly introduced species, will ripple through an entire biological community. I want to leave you with this final thought. We've seen how perfectly balanced and interconnected nature's energy flow truly is, right? From the sun, down to the grass, up to the eagle, and then right back into the soil. Knowing about this vast, beautiful network, where do you fit into the food web? How do your daily choices impact that incredible flow of energy? It's definitely something to chew on next time you step outside. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep exploring.